Hey guys, this is Dan with Gears and Gadgets. Thanks for tuning in. So I'm coming to you guys with another video. I wanted to round this series out a bit. If you guys watched the last video, I cut up the Ruroc Atlas 3.0 and compared it here with the Shoei RF-1400, which is actually the same helmet that I ride with today. And the reason I decided to do this video is because I started with, I guess, a more premium helmet with the RFSR. The only reason I went that way is because I was going to the MSF course and there was a store right nearby that sold helmets. I ran in and this was the only helmet they had in stock that fit my head. So I bought the RFSR and then I just kind of naturally progressed through the Shoei line. I've never bought more of an entry level or cheaper budget helmet, I suppose you'd say. So I went into Cycle Gear and I asked them, what is the helmet that you guys move probably the most of for somebody who comes in and says, give me the cheapest, safest helmet you could possibly provide? And that is when the salesman recommended the Sedici Strada II. So let's go ahead and do a proper unboxing of the Sedici Strada. The Sedici I bought at the store, so it's already been opened. It was tried on, which is a good thing that I did because this helmet, which I originally tried on in an extra large, was way too tight. I ended up going up to a 2XL. So you have your typical helmet bag. This is where you start seeing in a helmet like this that costs $200, the difference, like stuff like this, the helmet bag, it's not great. I don't really do a whole lot with the helmet bag, so I don't care so much about that. Not a ton of packaging in here. You do have your owner's manual, and that's it. So not a whole lot in the box there. This is the Sedici Strada II. And first impressions, I have to say, it's actually kind of impressive. It does have the drop-down sunshade here. This is an ECE rated helmet. This is not the Snell version. I actually didn't even realize when I bought it that it has the drop-down sunshade, which is it's nice. It's a nice touch. Those typically hit my glasses, so that's why I don't buy helmets with those. So the shell quality, it looks nice. It is a fiberglass blend. This is a Revzilla house brand or Cycle Gear house brand. So here you see you have two vents up on top that are closable. So this is kind of already a quick benefit over, say, the Ruroc. Shoei's do have closable vents. Rurocs, you can buy those plugs that you can insert. They insert on the inside of the helmet to block those. And then you also have a closable chin vent here. So you have your basic ventilation bases covered. Then getting into cheek pads, I think they do feel slightly better than what the Ruroc has for cheek pads, which I harped on very heavily. However, we'll get into that when I cut these things apart and really see what's on the inside here. The liner, it looks decent. I just like to cover kind of the first initial unboxing because I think when you open a helmet, at least for me, one of the first things I do is kind of grab that cheek pad, and it's the first touch point you have really on that helmet. I will say, when I tried this on in the store, I did notice that the chin skirt here that they have, I don't totally like the way that it mounts on here, but again, I'll get into that a little bit more when I tear it down. So talking about the visors here, just a basic release, sort of similar to what you see with the Shoei. So while I do appreciate the innovation, I thought I just broke it. That's where you get into some cheaper, budget-friendly helmet stuff. Is some of those clicks and snaps are not so great. But the detents here for the visor, not bad. It's a little bit vague when you're down low here, but it does hold up good. When you get into the twist locks on the Ruroc, that's a nice visor thing. I mean, I can't deny that that's a pretty quick way to switch them out. So if you do switch visors quite frequently, something like that would be important to you. Now these matte helmets do get like oils on your hands and things. They get to be kind of hard to keep these clean. My original RFSR, I learned that lesson, and I don't buy matte helmets anymore. Now one thing I will say, with glasses with this helmet, it was very difficult to get the glasses on when I tried it on in the store. I actually bent the arm on my glasses doing it, so I'll be a little more careful with that, but I will show you guys here. Yeah, that chin vent just popped off again. So, or the chin skirt just popped off as I was putting it on. Now, of course, you have traditional D-rings here. I personally just don't mind D-rings. They work. So here you have, you know, the fitment. It doesn't really move around all that much at all. This is, again, is an XXL. But getting these glasses in alongside those pads and then getting them to drop over your ears is very, very difficult. So I found that I had to actually push that pad aside. And I just fogged my glasses up. But that is the, yeah, that's, I mean, they're tight. I'll tell you what, they're not sliding down your face in this helmet. Oh, hey, it works. It works over the glasses, I'll be. I tell you what though, fitment is, it's nice. It feels full on the side of your head. So all in, you know, fitment is good. So let's go ahead and take this Sedici Strada II out on the road and see how she does. So out on the road here, this helmet seems to cut through the wind pretty good. Now, I don't ever really ride without a windscreen, so take that into account that I'm not coming from a whole lot of experience riding in clean air with my helmets. So I did want to do it with this one just mainly for the sake of testing the airflow, and it's good. It's, I would call it sufficient. It's not so much that it's like blowing me away where there's so much air circulating inside the helmet that you know, I would say it's amazing, but it's not bad. I would ride with this if that was kind of my budget. I would have no problem with it. Now, as far as wind noise goes, it's hard to explain noise, but what I will say is this helmet is significantly quieter than the Ruroc, but it's still kind of loud. What I do hear is the wind smoothly rushing over the side of the helmet. So it's not objectionable, it's not buffeting, it's just it's a wind noise. So I would say I would probably wear earplugs in this helmet. It's kind of how I like to gauge some of these helmets and their noise is what I feel the need to have to wear earplugs right off the bat. When I mentioned that with the Ruroc, basically I said I would have to wear earplugs even just to commute 20-25 minutes to work. It was that much louder. This one I would probably not wear earplugs on a short ride like that, but I might consider it. It's still kind of up there, and with the Shoei RF-1400 I don't feel that need on that short of a ride at all. The other nice thing is it does have this drop down sunshade in here, and you know, I don't usually have those because they do tend to interfere with glasses. This one is not hitting my glasses, so it is worth noting, and it's nice to have that if you're not going to be wearing sunglasses, and you know, theoretically maybe you don't need to buy two visors with this because it does have it. Now, one thing I don't like about these drop down sunshades, and they're all kind of similar, is that you do have a delineation between clear and sunshade, and there's kind of a line. Kind of makes your visor feel smaller a little bit just because you have this weird line coming along the bottom. I think it looks good. I think it's a properly good looking helmet for a properly priced you know, budget friendly kind of option that is ECE rated. So at 90 I can hear a little bit of a whistle out of the top vents. It's very, very minor, but it is there, and I do want to acknowledge that. All in, I'd say though, this is a pretty good feeling helmet on the head with the crash ratings of ECE out on the road here. So let's get back to the garage and cut this thing in two and see what it's made of. So here we are yet again, another helmet cut up. Before I go any further, I will link at the end of this video in one of the cards you'll see over here to the video explaining why I did this, actually why I did the Shoei and Ruroc. Originally, It's something I want you guys to watch because it does get into a little bit more of the why I've started doing this. To be honest with you, cutting this Sedici in half just kind of helped put things even more in perspective in terms of these helmets. The Shoei RF-1400 is $571.33 out the door today. So that's taxes, shipping, all that, which shipping is free. The Ruroc Atlas 3.0 is $512.10 out the door. And the Strada, which I went and bought at Cycle Gear, was $195.58 out the door. Now these videos are not meant to be spec sheets. You guys, anybody watching this video can go read a spec sheet. That's boring. This is certainly more in-depth than that, aside from basically saying it's a fiberglass shell. Again, reading all the specs off, not really what I'm here for. This is more, what do you get for $200? And comparing that all the way up the line to here you have the Sedici interior liner. There you have the Ruroc interior liner. And then coming over to the Shoei, this is the Shoei liner. So this is a comparison of all three helmets, but also keep in mind price point, and you guys can make your decision from there. This is the liner that you see here, and I will say the first thing I noticed when buying a $200 helmet is, well, actually this chin skirt. When I put the helmet on, it pops off. This is not very secure. So right off the bat, when I bought this $200 helmet and put it on, I'm like, well, that kind of makes sense. That would probably not stay on for me. I usually ride with these because I do need the wind protection for the microphones for moto vlogging. Aside from that, if I didn't do it, I would probably just pull that off and toss it to the side because it would drive me nuts popping off all the time. The chin bar, you do notice this is it's just plastic. There's not a whole lot of refinement in my opinion there, but again, it's a $200 helmet. Going over to the Shoei, you have a nice leather material here. And then over with the Ruroc, you actually have a formed foam that's kind of hard, but this is obviously, it's nicer than what you get out of the Sedici. Now just going in order, pulling this stuff out as I see it onto the liner. This is something that I was critical of with the Ruroc, is the liner. And you start to see, again, this is a difference in price points for sure, is snaps. The snaps on the Sedici, you know, they're fine, they work. Again, for a $200 helmet, you can't go wrong with this, but comparing it up to, say, the Ruroc, which has much more positive snaps. Again, this is the Ruroc 3.0. I understand they redid these snaps year to year, but this Ruroc has much more positive engaging snaps for that liner. And now coming over to the Shoei, it gets even nicer because you have these really nice snaps. I mean, Shoei does this very, very well in terms of attaching the liner. It's just a very positive snap. You know it's engaged, and it stays exactly where it needs to stay. Even up along the brow line where the liner attaches, very positive engagement. This thing just fits in the helmet very, very nice. The Ruroc, similar. There's some different snaps here that go in up towards the brow line, but again, very positive engagement. When you come over to say the Sedici, you have just these open little spots here that go in there. Kind of got to fish around for where they go. Just pull it right out. Typically, you can't pull the EPS liner directly out of your helmet to attach something like this, but again, this is to be expected for the price point, but it is removable, which is nice. And then that just sort of kind of locks in there. But it works. I mean, it locks in there and it's fine. So looking at the construction of this liner a little bit closer, you have similar sort of material on the interior as maybe what you might see in the Ruroc. The Sedici foam, in my opinion, is a little bit firmer. It's a different constructed foam that I could say I prefer the harder foam. It just feels like it has a little more plush or push back to it, I guess you'd say. And then you also have this mesh layer here, kind of similar mesh layer that you have with the Ruroc. It's nice material. The material inside the Ruroc is nice. It's the foam. Now going over to the Shoei, this helmet pushing $575, you're getting this really, really nice material. This, I said it before, feels super nice on your head. It's actually a much thinner foam than what you get out of the Ruroc and the Sedici. but it feels so good. Even this microfiber sort of material at the top of the head, it just feels very, very good. Now you do have a nicer material. I actually like the Ruroc material they use on the interior more so than Sedici. It just feels a little bit more premium, but neither one of these, in my opinion, hold up to, say, the Shoei. So we'll toss those liners off to the side. Cheek pads. It's all about the cheek pads. That is something I want to talk about in this video, is the difference between, say, this Sedici liner cheek pad compared to the Ruroc cheek pad. What's interesting is that they're both using similar foam. So here you have the Ruroc cheek pad. It's just this black foam. Here you have the Sedici. It's darn near identical foam, to be honest with you. It feels very, very similar. But again, Sedici just has a little bit more, it's just a slightly firmer foam. Having that elasticity push back on your cheek just feels more positively engaging than what I felt on the Ruroc. Really not all that much different, to be honest with you. So this, let's talk about the leather before I toss these off to the side. The leather is, it's okay on the Sedici. It feels better on the Ruroc. When you start going over towards the Shoei, this is where you get into just a much nicer feeling material. And as I mentioned in the Ruroc video that I did comparing the Shoei to the Ruroc previously, this layered foam, that's where it's at. This layered foam is far superior than the single foam. It's throughout the entire design of this cheek pad, it's doing something different over here than what it's doing over here. And having that variation between those on your face, this Shoei feels awesome. So in my opinion, this is what everybody should be chasing, is the feeling of the interior lining of, say, the RF-1400. Do I expect that out of a $200 helmet? Probably not. Do I expect it out of a $500 helmet? I would expect more something towards this with the Shoei than something towards this with the Sedici, but I'll kind of leave that there. You guys know exactly how I feel about that. Again, I am judging these helmets by their price point. I'm not judging these as if they're supposed to be equals, because they're not priced identical, so therefore you have to make your decisions accordingly. Now, with the Sedici, taking these pads out, before I toss these to the side, I will say you also don't get the emergency release. So with the Ruroc and the Shoei, you get these little red pull tabs where in an emergency crash type situation, first responders can come and just quickly yank that pad out and safely pull the helmet off of your head without causing further injury. At least that's the intent. And with the Sedici, it's not really that, I don't want to say it's not easy, because there is Velcro here. It's just much less clear to a first responder that these are easy to pull out without causing any harm, I suppose you'd say. So there's this piece of plastic here, and it just kind of shoves in between the helmet. You know, again, that's what you're talking about when you start talking about different price points in helmets. Now, really into the meat and potatoes of what really makes a helmet a safety device. You're talking about foam layers and the exterior shell. This Sedici exterior shell on the outside looks awesome. For a $200 helmet, this thing looks very premium. I think that, honestly, this thing is like a sleeper helmet. I could see why they sell a whole bunch of these things, because they look awesome. I think they're great looking helmets. Now, the shell makeup, you do have vents. You have two on the top, one on the chin, which in my riding experience was nice. Ventilated fine. Again, for a $200 helmet, I was very impressed with the airflow out of this thing. The EPS liner, it's just very much, I don't know, basic. I mean, it looks relatively similar to the Shoei. The Shoei does have some additional holes cut in. You can actually see the way the Shoei does this is that they actually have holes cut in here. If you turn it around, they're not up here, and that's because there is a separate layer of foam here. This piece is different than this piece, and there's air channels that flow through, so you get an awful lot of cooling out of the Shoei. With the Sedici, you just kind of have one hole in the front that exhausts out to the back. It looks like it's all just one piece that's taking air and kind of flowing it front to back, and that's kind of what you get. But again, I thought like it felt fine. So with the Ruroc, you actually have these vents that kind of pull air in up through the top and do come in through a channel up at the top of the helmet and then exhaust out. There's a lot more, I can just tell you looking at this right now, you have a lot more designed airflow out of the Ruroc. This helmet vents very well. It's known, everybody talks about how awesome the ventilation is in the Ruroc. Both of those helmets, you can see there's more money spent in R&D in terms of airflow. That's an area where I would say with a cheaper helmet, you're probably not getting as much. But you do get, which is nice with the Sedici, is this drop-down sunshade, which is, it's nice, especially for somebody like me who wears glasses. You know, it's nice to have that option. That's a bit of an added benefit. Now, talking about the ear piece, this is something where I actually think that Ruroc could maybe learn a lesson from the cheaper helmet in terms of noise level. The Shoei has a little bit more of a dedicated path going through the foam. There's an angled spot here that the strap comes through. It seems like they were focused on trying to make this as small as possible to, I'm assuming, eliminate noise. That's my guess. The Ruroc, as I had mentioned, has this just big rectangular cutout. And then over here with the cheaper Sedici, you also have a similar just rectangular cutout, but they inserted a little piece of foam in here. As a matter of fact, when the helmet came apart, I was curious to know what that part came from. And that gets placed between where the chin strap comes through. So what you're doing is actually reducing that area that noise can potentially come through. Part of the thickness conversation that just, again, me shade tree mechanicking my way through trying to understand these helmets is measuring the Ruroc. I think I said I measured, like 7 millimeters. It's hard. It depends on where you measure it from, but let's just say around 7 millimeters. Over here, you have where your ear is, you have just an awful lot more EPS foam. In my mind, seems like a much better design in terms of soundproofing. Here we have 20 millimeters of foam. So call it 7 millimeters with the Ruroc to the 20 on the Sedici. You just have a little more material there, and I think, I mean, again, layman's terms, I feel like more foam, more sound deadening seems to make sense to me. But fit and finish, quality-wise, Ruroc crushes Sedici. I mean, this is all just plastic with these snaps, and the Ruroc looks nicer, certainly looks nicer. So that is that construction there. Now, the last point I will make when you're talking about the shell of, say, a cheaper $200 helmet to these more expensive helmets, Ruroc having the carbon fiber, I don't doubt that's better than fiberglass. Sounds better to me, again, layman's terms. The Sedici, you have like these screw heads that are much more crass in design, as having screw heads where they're attaching these outside vents and things like that. It just feels cheaper to have these screw heads sitting in here. As a matter of fact, this one's not even screwed all the way down. As opposed to when you get over to, say, a Ruroc, you don't have any screw heads or anything that are holding on any of these vents. It's all just flat, finished, I guess you'd say, inside the helmet. Same thing when you come over to the Shoei. A couple rivets here for the side attachment spot for the visor, but aside from that, everything else in here is probably epoxied or somehow, I don't know how it's held on there, but you do not see any screw heads on the inside of the Shoei. All in, I'm looking at these things and saying that the way that I view these helmets is where they are punching in their weight class, so to speak. So the Sedici is definitely punching above its weight class for sure. For $200, it is a very solid helmet. I would recommend it. It is a $200 helmet. So when I'm saying I'd recommend this, understand that I'm not recommending it over the Shoei. So again, Sedici punching over its weight class. Shoei is punching, I'd say, at its weight class. I mean, I think it is a $570 helmet. I don't regret the purchase. I ride with it all the time. I trust it with my life. So not sponsored at all. None of these are sponsored. I just happen to trust Shoei. Now the Ruroc, that's the interesting conversation, because I think in terms of construction, aside from the fact that I've totally destructed it, the liner, they're the shell, the EPS liner, the visors, all of this stuff I think punches above its weight class, to be honest with you. And honestly, I just think it's kind of a shame, because it's great. And then you get into the liner, and because it is the contact point of the helmet to your face, that's kind of where it punches below its weight class. And unfortunately, I think that Ruroc is being defined by the liner, and unfortunately, the rest of the helmet is suffering for the liner. So I hope to see Ruroc succeed. I genuinely mean that. Again, none of this is sponsored, and I have no dog in the race. I could care less which helmet you buy. Honestly, don't care. With that being said, guys, that is my Sedici Strada II, Ruroc Atlas III, Shoei RF-1400 teardown comparisons of, I guess you'd say, cheap, middle, most expensive helmet sort of comparison, which this is clearly going more towards most. But that's where I'm at with this, guys. So thank you very much for tuning in. Again, if this is your first time tuning in, please click that subscribe button down below. Remember, likes go a long way to help support the channel. I'll see you guys next time.